Def Comedy Jam was a really important show. It was, I mean, for obvious reasons. The comedy that comes out of is everything. It's just everyone we can think of in comedy right now, or close to it anyway. If they're not on Saturday Night Live, they were on Def Comedy Jam. I mean, really amazing. That was on HBO, and it was Russell Simmons was the producer and created it, and I got asked by, I think, Jeff Ross. Not Jeff Ross the comedian, Jeff Ross the producer. But Jeff called me, and I went over to meet Stan Lathan, who was also producer and director. And known for, you know, he had directed Sanford and Son, actually, and a few other things too, but very cool guy. And we went to a theater that's now, I think it may now be the Ford Theater in Times Square, or one of those that has been renovated beautifully. This was a dump. I mean, it was really, you know, if I could have you imagine it with water just dripping down the theater, and half the seats are covered in mold and all ripped up. It was almost that bad. And no one had been in there in a long time. And had this idea, again, there was a budget thing involved, but I liked the idea that, it was this old theater. I liked that it was really distressed. There was something about the idea of making that part of the story, of coming into an old Times Square theater and using as scenery perhaps a repertory of backdrops and curtains, things that were flying in the fly system of the theater, and using those things collaged against each other, as if you just brought down the repertory of whatever the theater had left and kind of made a collage of images. And I used mostly industrial or warehouse imagery, which were all rented drops. I didn't make any of them. But they were all hand-painted and really old. And you can find most of them here at Sony at JC Backing. They're beautifully painted backdrops. And I used those with tattered curtains, you know, just things hanging, and a huge light bulb hanging down like it was the safety light. Theatrical and unrealistic on a certain level, but it felt like it could have been there that way. That was the idea of it. Like they had come in to do a show and used what was there to find. Of course, there was nothing there, but I put it there. But that was the idea, was so that the room did not feel like I didn't want to put a set inside a room that had so much to offer, but would be completely in contrast to what the rest of the room was. I wanted it all to feel like it all belonged together. You know, and then Stan had that. I think it was Stan Lathan had this. He wanted the audience on the sides facing a thrust, and so I tiered them up. Into that relation. You know, not the relationship. But I tiered them up so they stepped up in front of the stage and then around a thrust. And it was done that way for years afterwards. We always did it that way. And even when I stopped doing the show and they brought it to California, they still set it up that way.